Denmark, Singapore, New Zealand. Three modern, clean and relatively wealthy nations with some of the best living standards anywhere on Earth, located on three different continents. Welcome back to the Geography Bible. I'm Sam, your narrator for the video. In this video, we'll be comparing three magnificent countries known for their great living conditions and high quality of life. We will compare their key demographics, geography, economy, and some quality of life statistics. And of course, along the way, we will throw in some facts that you will hopefully find interesting and intriguing. So sit back, relax, and we hope you learn something new. Starting off with Denmark, a Scandinavian nation located in Europe, and its only land border is Germany. Next, we have Singapore, officially the Republic of Singapore, which is a sovereign island city-state in maritime Southeast Asia. Its only land border is Malaysia. And finally, we have New Zealand. New Zealand is an island country in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. It consists of two main land masses, the North Island and, you guessed it, the South Island. It, of course, has no land borders. Okay, cool, so now let's jump into some key demographics, starting off with their population and their population densities. The similarity of their total populations is one of the reasons why we chose these three nations. Starting off with the least populated out of the three, New Zealand, with just over 4.8 million people and a yearly growth rate of around 0.82%. This makes them the 126th most populated country on Earth, behind the Central African Republic and above another African country, Mauritania. Next, we have Denmark, with 5.8 million people and a yearly growth rate of around 0.35%. Denmark is the 115th most populated country in the world, behind, you guessed it, Singapore, and above their neighbour, Finland. And finally, we have the most populated out of the three, Singapore, with around 5.85 million and a yearly growth rate of around 0.79%, making them, of course, the 114th most populated nation in the world, above Denmark and below Turkmenistan. Alright, so now that we know their populations, let's move on to their population densities. In my opinion, the lower here, the better. A lower population density means more space, less congestion, and less traffic. Okay, so this one is super interesting. Starting off with the lowest out of the three, we have New Zealand, with an incredible 18 people per kilometre squared, making them one of the least densely populated countries anywhere in the world. Next, we have Denmark, with roughly 135 people per kilometre squared. And then finally, Singapore. Are you ready for this one? Singapore has a mind-boggling 7,804 people per kilometre squared, making them the third most densely populated place on Earth, behind Monaco and Macau. What intrigues me is that I've visited Singapore before, and it didn't feel too crowded to me. I mean, it was very busy, there was lots of traffic, but from what I remember, some parts of London actually felt so much more crowded than Singapore. So now, let's move on to the overall life expectancy for a resident in these three countries. This is where these three countries all excel in. So starting off with the lowest, we have Denmark at an impressive 81.4 years, making them the 32nd highest in the world. Followed by New Zealand with 82.8, making them the 19th highest in the world. And then the highest out of the three, Singapore, with a seriously impressive 84 years, making them the 5th highest anywhere on Earth. And then finally, to end this section, let's take a look at the average age of the population. The lower here, the better, as this makes for a younger workforce and less of an aging population. So another win here for Singapore at a very young 34.9 years, followed by New Zealand at 38.1, and then the oldest out of the three, Denmark, at just under 42 years. Alright, so now let's move on to their physical geography, starting off with their total land size. So as expected, Singapore has by far the smallest land size at just under 7,200 kilometers squared. Incredibly, making them the 190th largest country on Earth. Next, we have Denmark at just over 43,000 kilometers squared, making them the 133rd biggest country in the world. And then finally, the 76th largest country in the world, New Zealand, with 269,000 kilometers squared. Next, let's take a look at how much coastline these countries have. So with a minuscule 193 kilometers, Singapore has by far the least out of the three. However, it must be noted, Singapore is actually home to the second busiest shipping port anywhere on the planet. Next, we have Denmark with 7,300 kilometers. And then finally, to no surprise, as it is an island, New Zealand with the most at just over 15,000 kilometers. Next, let's take a look at the percentage of their land that is covered in forest. Forests are great habitats for flora and fauna and help to remove unwanted pollutants from the air. In my opinion, forests are essential when it comes to rating a country's value. Starting off with the most this time, we have New Zealand with nearly a third of their land covered in forests. Next, we have Denmark with a surprisingly low 13% of their land covered in forest. And then again, to no surprise, we have Singapore with the least at just 3.3%. There is literally no space for forest in this urban state. Speaking of forests in Singapore, Gardens by the Bay is up there with one of my favourite places anywhere on earth. After seeing it in a David Attenborough documentary, I told myself I must visit this place, and I sure was not disappointed. If you are able to visit Singapore one day, then I highly suggest chilling in this awesome area. You will also get an awesome view of the Marina Bay Sands Hotel while you are there. Alright, so now let's move on to some economy and financial statistics. This is where it gets super interesting. So starting off with their GDP, the gross domestic product, which is a monetary measure of the market value of all the final goods and services produced in a specific time period by a country. With the 50th largest economy on earth, New Zealand has a GDP of just over $204 billion US, putting them above Greece and behind Peru. Not bad for a country with less than 5 million people. Although, thinking about it now, that is roughly the total net worth of Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon. Wow, to put that in perspective, that is crazy. And then next we have Singapore with just under $324 billion US. Again, seriously impressive for a country with less than 6 million people. This puts them above Malaysia and just behind, you guessed it, Denmark. And finally, the highest out of the three with just under $330 billion US, we have Denmark, putting them just behind Ireland and above our friends Singapore. So this one was super close. Now let's take a look at the GDP growth rate for these three countries. So with 2.3%, Denmark actually has the lowest out of the three. Next we have New Zealand at an impressive 3% growth rate. And then again, to no surprise, Singapore takes the win here with 3.6%. These three nations all have super impressive inflation rates, with New Zealand having the highest at 1.9%, followed by Denmark at just 1.1%,